Earlier this week, we had a kind of cryptic tweet from Ray Fisher, and he was the actor who played Cyborg in the Justice League movie, accusing Joss Whedon of abusive, unprofessional behavior on the set. This immediately sparked off a lot of articles, kind of tying, for a weird way, tying right into kind of the Me Too, even though it really didn't fit. But what does this mean? And what's the broader context of maybe people just being assholes? Hey everybody, this is Perch. In a time of a lot of sexual assault allegations and kind of through the Me Too movement, where we're encouraging people to come forward with their stories, there's one consequence I think we're starting to slowly see that blends a lot together. And this is not the most perfect example of it, and I'll explain why in a moment. But it's that there's a difference between people who are maybe committing a crime, committing sexual assault, roofing someone and raping them, those kinds of, truly abhorrent behavior that are crimes, that are felonies that, deserve jail time, versus somebody who is just an asshole. And in business, and especially, even though Hollywood likes to kind of, portray itself as a friendly kind of, more progressive industry, it also has a very firm reputation, and a well-deserved one, for being cutthroat. And in business, cutthroat behavior is not harassment. It's not criminal. It's just the person's unpleasant to work with. And in comics, there's been a lot of, it's just kind of where you fall on two sides of the issue. Jim Shooter has a reputation, one he has leaned into himself and is admitted to, of being a real jerk, being dismissive of people, shutting down kind of ideas if he didn't like the way they were going, kind of being very short with people at times, not letting them get away with kind of a lot of things. And there's kind of two points of view on it. There's either, this guy was a holy terror and we hated working with him. People like John Byrne, of course, legendary for his hatred of Jim Shooter. Or there's a new narrative of, Jim Shooter is what the comic industry needs. It needs that firm hand. It needs that kind of drill sergeant type mentality. Now, the reality is, you know best what works for you as a person. You know if you really want to, work for and with assholes, and if you need that, or if you, are kind of self-motivating. There's not a one answer. Some people do need that kind of behavior. They're wired that way. Even going through school, I remember there's a teacher who was just an awful person, would kind of, be mean, would insult people, drive people to tears and everything else. And half the students would look at that and go, she's pushing us to do our best work. She's mean and she's terrible, but I'm glad I like working for this mean, dismissive person. And the other half were like, I don't need a mean, dismissive person to get my job done. This is just, I need to turn in homework assignments, get some work done. I don't do better by having somebody bark at me. And I think that you have two distinct personality types, some that need it and some that don't. And so it's not a clear-cut black and white situation. But going back to this Ray Fisher, Joss Whedon situation, he basically called out Joss Whedon, and then also said that DC Entertainment president, chief creative officer Jeff Johns enabled the behavior, as well as Warner Brothers co-president John Berg said that they basically encouraged or let Joss Whedon do this. And nobody's given any real comments other than Berg told Variety it's completely untrue that we enabled any unprofessional behavior from Whedon, and then added this little line, which is the funniest, most absurd thing of the whole thing. Is that I remember Ray Fisher, Cyborg, being upset that we wanted him to say "booyah," which is a well-known saying of Cyborg in the animated series. That I'm sorry. In the midst of all of this, that's just hilarious. I'm sorry. So anyway, Whedon. So over to Whedon. Whedon's an interesting case. So first off, it has been said before many times that Whedon can be very unpleasant to work with. Now, there's some people who defend him, say he's a great director and caring, and people credit him with their careers and think he's wonderful. And then there's other people that say he's kind of short, dismissive, can be just a real awful person to work with. So this isn't necessarily a new allegation. This isn't something that just sprung up out of nowhere of like, hey, this guy's a jerk. On top of that, and this is why it does get a little complicated, Joss Whedon's wife has made very public statements, has very well described that Whedon's kind of self-described feminist. He described himself as a feminist. He looks out for women. He's done a lot of shows and entertainment properties like Buffy and Firefly and other things that have strong women characters. He says that's important to him. His wife notes that he is also a hound dog, will sleep around on set, cheated on her many times, and generally abused his position. Now, Ray Fisher's not saying any of that, or at least not yet. Abusive is a big word. So, unfortunately, that word has more connotations than it used to. If you just said Joss Whedon is his exact tweet was Joss Whedon's unset treatment of cast and crew of Justice League was gross, abusive, unprofessional, and completely unacceptable. Take out abusive for a moment and listen to it. If his treatment of the cast and crew of Justice League was gross, unprofessional, and completely unacceptable. If that's what he had written, I think most people would have gone, yeah, and kind of left it at that, because gross, unprofessional, unacceptable kind of speaks to somebody who's, a flake and a terror. And unfortunately, a lot of people in Hollywood fit that bill. But adding in the word abusive in light of all this Me Too stuff leads people to wonder more. And then the comments from his wife and his history of being, sexually demanding. I don't know. No, that's not the right word. Just out there with a lot of different people. That's now where there's questions. But generally, from all the pieces, it sounds like he was just a kind of a prima donna jerk of a director. Which, again, this wouldn't be the first time he's been accused of that. And we've seen lots of evidence that he fits this bill, as do quite a few actors and actresses and directors within Hollywood. So, maybe there's a story here, maybe there is not. It's getting a lot of attention because people love this stuff, and unfortunately it falls into everything else. But I do want to raise the question again, because I think it's a good one, is, what does comics really need? I know that a number of shows, including Richard Myers, has talked about Jim Shooter is a legend in the industry, and he needs that firm hand. He kept a strong ship in order and everything else. And I think, there's definitely positives to what Shooter did. He did run a tight ship. That's true. And I think he definitely can, lay claim to a lot of things. I think there's a few things that get attributed to him around the newsstand and how he drove it that was not. I think Jim Shooter kind of lucked into that moment. He didn't hurt it, but I think sometimes people attribute a lot of the success of the marketplace incorrectly to him. I think there's again more of a team effort, more of that stuff was already in play, and it was kind of the nature of what was going on at the time. But to his credit, he didn't mess it up either. Other people did come around and mess it up. So you got to give him credit. But I push back. I always push back on this idea that you have to have a stern kind of asshole person in charge in order to get things done. I think that's a shame if you're running a business or you're doing something and you have to say to yourself, in order to get good results out of my employees, I have to scream at them. I think you've got the wrong employees, and I think I think you're on the wrong track all over the place. And so I'm not so quick to accept this. We need a stern hand, and people need to kind of put their fist down and shout and get results. I think people dismiss now a lot of this stuff too quickly. Like they'll go to the he's an asshole, but these people deserved it. It's interesting. I don't know what's fascinating is when this tweet came out, people were generally like, "How dare you say that about Joss Whedon?" Or, "Yeah, I always knew it." There's been very few people who've done the, "Wait, what did he do again?" I'm surprised by lack of curiosity. People are over it. They're just willing to go in one way or another. It's something. But anyway, what do you think? Strong, stern behavior, abusive. Where does that fit? Should it be accepted? Should it not? Where's the line exactly? If a director shows up and just starts screaming at people, but the movie is a Oscar winner, big budget, makes a lot of money. I know those two things don't go together, but just very successful. I'll put it that way. Do we overlook that behavior? Do we, like the kids did in the class I was in a long time ago, you chalk that up to, sometimes somebody has to scream at somebody to get their best work. Is that valid? Let me know your comments below. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter or Facebook at Comic Perch, and thanks for listening.